Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good afternoon, Sangha. It's been a while since I've been with you, so I want you to know that I missed everybody and hope everybody's doing well. We know that there's so many emergencies out in the world and people have to take care of them too. But I want to encourage everyone to try to find the joy in the moment and dwell in that joy. And there's joy everywhere. You have to turn your head sometimes to see it, but it's there. So don't despair. It's all impermanent. So don't despair. All right. Dharma contemplation. Everyone has a sheet. All right. The information is up on the screen. Yes. So we're ready to read. I took my phone, took my glasses. This way. Thank you. Good. All right. Now that's fine. Thank you. Sounds good to me. All right. Let's read the Contemplation Paragraph. He abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbor thoughts like this, hatred will never be allayed. He abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those that have... wait, hold on.
Those others do not recognize their fear, we should restrain ourselves. But those wise ones who realize it at once and all their enmity.
The dog ate my homework.
She fixed it all up there so they don't know what we were laughing at.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's not a problem. All right. Let's speak on the words or phrases that jumped out on us that seemed to go a little deeper in us than others did. Good.
Those others do not recognize. Ageless law. Hatred is allayed by non-hatred.
Hatred is never allayed by further acts of hate.
But those wise ones who realize this at once and all their enmity.
We should restrain ourselves.
Okay.
in this world.
All right.
That is the fixed and ageless law.
Did anyone have any contributions from the chat room?
And all their piety.
Did anyone have any contributions from the chat room?
And all their piety.
All right. As we know,
Realize this at once.
Realize this at once.
okay, as we know that our world isn't perfect, and this is what our practice is all about. So for those who are looking for perfection, as we know that our world isn't perfect, this is what our practice is all about. So for those who are looking for perfection, all right, if there's some comment to be made in the stream, you can raise your hand and we will bring you into the Dharma hall. Okay. What we are trying to bring emphasis to is our work to refine our perception about reality. We've committed and we're working really hard here at Hardwood. We're working very hard here at Hardwood to prepare ourselves for a renunciation of unwholesome thoughts and deeds. And we want to understand why it seems to be so difficult to align ourselves with simple instruction. The teachings most often use only one single word, and that's renunciation. Now, this paragraph explains to us, or diagrams for us, what renunciation is. It is not a working with an unwholesome state. It's not examining it and defining it and trying to understand it. These instructions clearly tell us that when we are turn our attention to wholesomeness, not that we try to engineer or rewrite our thoughts so that they will become more wholesome eventually, but that we clear the board of unwholesome thinking and actions so that we can replace them with wholesome. If we take the time to study all of the suttas and all of the instructions, you will notice that in every sutta that has a teaching about renunciation or conversion of unwholesome to wholesome, it's about replacing in its entirety the concept that we're having an unwholesome state about. It's not about trying to reform the state of mind or the heart of unwholesomeness and try to encourage it to refine itself or reform itself. And this has to do with understanding what perception or memory is. So if we can just think for a few minutes, does anyone want to try to explain what they think happens in the synapses that gives us the experience that we call memory or perception? Anybody? What does the brain do with the information that is absorbed by the senses? How does the brain work with this information? Okay, so the new information is absorbed through the sense gates, yeah? Right. But when it finds itself in the internal sphere, in the vast spaces of identification, like when it occurs to the brain to have a conversation about whether or not it's seen this information before or it understands what the information is trying to tell it. So we have to realize, we have to begin to understand how the mind works so that we can ally with the mind. We can use the mind for purposes that will clear or undistort the reality that we see and the expectations that we have about the practices that we do. So the first thing that happens when we absorb an idea or concept or image through the sense gates, the mind sets about identifying the message, or identifying the messenger, if you want to call the firing, the wiring of the brain a messenger. It identifies and relays to this presence that we call the I or the we or the me, what that experience, what that moment is all about. So, as we read the first chat, we have two constructs. We have one where a person harbors or holds on to thoughts that disturb the person, that causes the person to feel threatened. And consequently, because the person decides to hold on to that memory, the memory is just strengthened. The perception is just strengthened that this is information that I should hate and that I should trying to think of the word here, that I should react in a way that protects myself, protects my possessions, protects my family. And it says, as long as we continue to take information in and rely on the current or the that we rely on the suggestions made by this discerning of the information that tells us we should fight this experience. We should retaliate against this experience. We should hate this experience. Then the next time we see or have an experience that is the same, we reinforce the bad feeling, the hatred, and we never make any progress. We never have any turn of the wheel which helps us to build on a wisdom base that says holding on to hatred, holding on to fear, holding on to threats and unwholesome design against a structure that comes into the sense gates doesn't do anything but reinforces within us the idea that this is something to be angry about. This is someone that we should fight against. So we never we only continue to strengthen the ideas and the concepts within us internally, in our mind, in our consciousness, that encourages us and suggests us to hate this particular idea, person, action. Because this is where we go with the idea. We go inside and we go to the memory or perception that this is something to be hated. And so we never erase from our perception, our memory, a different way to view, a different way to see this same person, the same action. Are you following what I'm trying to share? That the information that is absorbed by our sense gates have two things they do. Either we renounce them and ignore them and replace the whole packet with something positive that we can grow on, something that we can define the experience and work with the experience, not in the way we've assimilated it, not in the way that we perceived it, but in a way that turns our attention toward a wholesome response to the same dance that we've done with this other information, other energy. Or even when we have the intention to do better, to not hate but to love, to not argue but to harmonize ourselves with the packet that's coming into us, that's being absorbed by us. The function of the synapses is all about taking us first to a field of energy that we recognize and we've seen before. We think we've seen it before. We say, I've seen this before and I know what this is, and it's this. And this is the way I should respond to it. So, although we have made commitments and we've made meditation experiences, saying to ourselves that I'm going to do differently with this piece of information, with this moment that has come into my reality. Because we bring it in with the same taint of mind that we saw it the last time, it has nowhere to go but to the same memory base. And so therefore, we tend to strengthen our familiar attitude, and we never get to the point, or we never get to the exercise where we view this as something that we will not allow to disturb our peace. We will not allow it to cause us to have unwholesome states, because we choose and we replace the intention to have unwholesome states of mind about the situation by creating a whole new platform of connection in the brain, wiring in the brain that says, you see this and you should treat it with love and joy and respect and try to understand it. Try to look at it and find the positive aspects of it and embrace those. acknowledging that in this packet of information that we've absorbed through a sensescape, there might be information stored in the transfer to the mind, to the brain, that this is unwholesome, this is an attack, this is disrespect, this is an affront. You're not giving me the love and joy that I want. But because I don't bring it in with that energy, it doesn't become strengthened in the closet of memory. But instead, what I get through the experience, the dynamic of filtration and the wiring of the brain and the firing of the brain, is I get a new experience that evaluates and defines this moment as something that I can learn from, that I can love with, that I can spend time with, that I can be positive with. And I'm not reinforcing any of the memories that have defined this as something terrible for me, something hateful for me, something threatening to me, something that I've got to fight against. Do you understand? Okay. So if our technician will put up the next paragraph. It says, and we can read this together if you want, concentrating on unwholesome things and constantly talking about it with others will never help you to do the good things that you desire to do. Good habits and breaking bad ones is focusing on what you want to do and not what you want to stop doing. And how hard it is. Don't defeat yourself on the wrong things. Reprogram yourself. This is right effort. Okay, so what I am encouraging all of you to do as you work on setting the right tone of the mind for this transition, this discovery of a new self in the new day, in the new year, that you don't reinforce any of the unwholesome habits that you have, that you want to lay aside, deny, evaporate, conquer, whatever words you want to use. But just remember that it's not about focusing on the unwholesome act, but it's about focusing on the wholesome act, not the unwholesome. Now, some people or some minds might argue that that's an extreme that is not real. But remember, nothing is real. So it's up to us to develop the power that allows us to transform ourselves in a way that brings about a result that we desire. So this is why we've been struggling with transformation for all of these years. Because in our sincerest attempt to transform and to be different, we've always brought in the old memory. I don't want to do this again. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be fearful. I don't want to be angry. You're bringing in images and situations that are the same thing you're trying to get rid of. You're trying to give up. And this connection, this wiring in the mind and brain that causes memories to store, will just store that same information. So it'll go to the same place. It won't transform, it won't change. All right. I've done my best to explain it in a layman way, because that's what I am. I'm a layman. What I'm always impressed about is how these men and women 1,500 years ago knew this and encouraged us to arise or to rise up to the same level of existence, the same level of spirituality that they had. And they said, here's how you do it. You don't hold on to the unwholesome. You renounce the unwholesome and you embrace the wholesome. You bring in a whole new image, a whole new picture, a whole new dynamic. You don't think about what you used to be yesterday. You think about what is best for you, your community, your family, your partners today, this moment. And I guarantee you, and you don't get many guarantees in life, but I guarantee you that if you work with that over these holidays, over these days and evenings and nights of desiring transformation and change, that it will work. Because you're not bringing in conflicting suggestions, but you're bringing in very clear instructions to what you want to build and construct in the mindscape. Okay. Questions, comments?
Joshua has something to say.
Okay.
Say it again.
Have I been called upon?
Yes.
Okay. Hello. I just wanted to mention that something interesting that they've begun to understand about how the brain functions is that when we experience a memory, neurological pathways are formed in order to retain the memory, but that when we recall the memory, the pathways get reformed, which in my opinion works perfectly with this concept, because as you reform the memory in recalling the memory, you have the possibility of having some influence over how the memory is reformed in your brain, which is this sort of wonderful time where science and this 1,000-year-old knowledge that we have brought forward come together and work in simultaneously. I find that very fascinating, that we know and that the brain is a lot more plastic than we had previously thought. So I wanted to just mention that. Thank you.
Is it okay for me to share? Good afternoon. This is, I think, really important, and I found it possible in certain areas of my life in the 70s. When I was in college, I gained a few pounds. I think they call it the freshman 15. Luckily, it wasn't 15. But rather than shaming myself and thinking about, oh, I can't have that lasagna, that cake, that pizza, whatever, I joined up with a girlfriend I can still hear her laughter. And we would go through the line together, and we decided to pick colorful food, and we would get, the greens and the tomatoes and the cottage cheese. And then we would go outside and sit and eat together. And we didn't feel like we were denying ourselves. And we just reformed, as this passage says, what the experience would be. And I weighed the same or less than I did when I was 17, because I formed this pattern. And so, that's something that worked for me. There are a couple other points. One is, we are born through epigenetics with genes that tell us to be cautious or fearful about things that our ancestors have lived through. And sometimes we can have a feeling arise and we don't even know what that is from. And it could be something that they know it with rat studies and licking behavior and nurturing. There are lots of things that in science that we've learned about genetics and the brain and behavior. But the brain also fills in any void at the time, as well as when we recall it, because nature abhors a vacuum. And so if you are eyewitness to something or you're hearing something, your brain will fill in gaps, and you think it's very real, but it's not. And I think for me, that's very helpful to help me let go of my perception of things and realize that there may be something that I'm not aware of, and gain some peacefulness and even some more compassion about the other that might be interfacing with me. But I have more difficulty doing that towards my own behavior. The example I gave about eating worked well, but think about some other aspects of my abilities. I'm not quite as compassionate, and I'm working on that and rewiring. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Should I go next? Okay, so I thank you for saying that it's just very hard for us to follow a few simple directions. I make that same experience over and over and over again. And so I could very well follow what you were saying, at least I think so. And I do have the impression that it comes like when I practice it, I can easily get confused. And I was thinking I might share an example. Yesterday I had a mild run in with somebody and it created some repercussions in me emotionally. And I was thinking, how? Sort of what's happening. And so eventually I took out some paper and wrote about it. And it very much made the experience that my actions and reactions had something to do with really old beliefs. And so I'm trying to relate what I did yesterday to what I heard this morning or afternoon. And I'm trying to figure out, so by writing this down and possibly investigating, am I then deepening my old tracks? Or let's say, when I then write about how, like, I discover kind of how this is related to my old stuff, thinking and fears, and sort of take some time to figure, to sort of understand how I would rather act and what I would rather believe. So now I'm wondering, where am I? Sort of, am I practicing the old things more, or am I also making room for dropping it and aligning myself and practicing principles that are more wholesome? Thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yep.
Oh, great. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
One of the things I enjoy about your teaching style, Panyadeep, is make us think. And so when you posed the first, when we read the text, and then you asked us to sort of consider it, I started writing down, that, how would I practically apply this? So if someone's coming to me in hatred, how do I, or abuse, how do I not respond in kind or respond with some sort of equal ill will? And I tried to get to what in my mind, where would it start? And I wrote that it would start with not identifying with whatever actions or word that person was trying to sort of put on me or project onto me. And I wrote some other things, but I guess it all comes down to, for me, how can I, and this is something I got from Eckhart Tolle. It is, and I use it quite a bit. It's been easy for me to remember, and that's helpful in these circumstances when, someone's coming with certain behavior, or they're starting to talk about a certain thing or talk in a certain way. And we have this past memory that raises these assumptions that, like you said, I've seen this before. And sometimes we jump in and head it right off and cut it right off and say, no, we're not going to do this, And I guess the only explanation for that is that we're not in the moment, and we're not allowing for the spontaneity of the possibility that even though this person may have acted this way and it had been, caused by this or that in the past, that maybe that's not true today. And how do we allow for that? And I guess the only real answer is, how can we stay in the moment and not allow ourselves to swing to the past or project to the future, that if I allow this to happen right now, then in the future, it's going to be painful for me. or there's going to be a precedent set that I don't want to, hold on to. So I guess for me, the thing that helps with that is while that's occurring, I'm repeating to myself, can I be the space for this? And that seems to help sort of ground me, at least, to be able to endure what it is I'm starting to feel aversion to. And it gives a little space before I begin to maybe react in the way I might otherwise do. So it seems like, certainly it's clear that just because someone else is acting badly towards us doesn't mean we have to act badly back, right? I loved what the gentleman said about when we recall a memory, the synapses are reformed. And so this goes back to everything we've been trying to do. I've been trying to do on this path, which is, how do we stop the habitual behavior? Well, we stop the habitual, mental process. And when we do that, it seems like from what that gentleman was sharing, it degrades. And if it degrades and the synapses are no longer there, those tracks get weak, then then we, I guess the process of letting go is to allow those tracks to reform with other things that might be more useful for us than the same old bad reactions to bad actions that we've lived with to date. So thank you.
Okay, let's make it easy. Instead of making it a person who is assaulting us or insulting us in a way that gets on our nerves and makes us react badly, why don't we just make it a basketball? And sit down in a chair or cushion and see yourself making baskets from the foul line. And you're seeing in your mind's eye that you are shooting the ball and making a basket. And what practice and demonstrations have shown is that whether we imagine ourselves doing what we want to do well, or whether we do what we want to do well in reality, there's not much difference in the progression of our wellness, if you will, or our goodness, whether we are doing it in person or whether we are doing it from memory, whether we're doing it in the mind. That we get better at doing it because we see ourselves doing it. We are informing and rewiring the synapses by thinking about doing this correctly, whether it's shooting the basketball or meeting a person who is out of sorts, angry, by meeting them with love. So in your practice, you sit on your cushion, you take the example, and you have the person in your example approaching you with anger and accusations, disdain, disrespect, but you see yourself in the same film acting accordingly, being soft with them, being kind to them, trying to talk them off of the cliff and talk to them in a way that softens or dampens their irritation. And you keep practicing that. You keep doing what you would want to do in a real life situation. And then when the real life situation comes, you've had enough practice in how to do it that you do it well. Whether it's shooting a basketball or talking to a person, talking them off the ledge. So don't categorize the the experiences as, oh, this is less serious than this, or this I can do, but that I can't. Whether they abuse you, whether they beat you, whether they yell at you, whether they rob from you, what I want to do is love that person. And no matter what it is that I think they've done, or I think that they're doing, that's not important. What's important is that I do what it is that I think is the correct thing to do, which is to love them and respect them and understand them. Now, it's not to argue with them. So if I approach them with the act of kindness, softness, respect, and they just puke on me, they just try to goad me into getting upset, to get loud, to get defensive. Since I don't want to do this, I don't do that. And if I find that the person doesn't want to listen, doesn't want to make this different, then I turn around and walk away. I don't continue to try to make them understand if I see right now that for whatever reason they can't understand, for whatever reason they can't work it out, for whatever reason they can't love me like I love them. They can't respect me like I respect them. They can't be kind to me like I am kind to them. And so I let them be. I tell them, well, I love you, and I can see that right now we can't talk with each other, so I'll talk to you again very soon, I hope. But I don't argue with them. So you present the way you want to be and see if this influences or settles down the person, and if it doesn't, you let them be. They're not listening to you right now. It takes two people to argue. It takes one person to love. So make the decision about who you want to do and who you want to be, and then offer that to the whole world. Offer that to everybody that you see. Start with the basketballs first, because that doesn't bring any emotion to the person. Doesn't bring any emotion to you. If you try to start with the hard stuff, where you're working with a person that you have an issue with, it can be difficult. If you start with basketballs first, and you gotta have a basketball court, though. You gotta have a hoop, so that you can see for yourself that you're getting better at shooting basketballs by sitting down and meditating on shooting basketballs. You'll see that you're getting better at doing that. Ultimately, you'll also see that you're getting better at relating to people in a kind and gentle and soft way, because you will have the patience to wait for them, or to give them the opportunity to speak their minds, to say what they want to say, without you figuring that you've got to correct or change their ideas. Just let them say what they've got to say. And then love them. And say, I really respect your point of view. I don't agree with it, but I understand the way you're coming and what you're saying, and I'm going to go think about it. And sometimes that's all a person wants to do, is make sure that you're hearing them. Make sure you're listening to them. Okay. Okay. Is there someone else who'd like to share? Go ahead, Alex. Okay, unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, all right. Hi. I just wanted to say how much I appreciated your guidance on renouncing the unwholesome and embracing the wholesome. And I really didn't want to say anything, but I want to embrace, that like the wholesome, the suggestion of not being stingy. And so I really like the notion of the harbor. And like, do I want to cultivate a harbor for the unwholesome, or do I want to cultivate a harbor for the wholesome? And yeah, I would much rather make effort to cultivate a harbor for the wholesome. So the wholesome can hang around, and the unwholesome ship can just pass on through. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll share. My name is Noelle.
Hello, Noelle.
Hi. I loved that you brought up sitting on the cushion, visualization, walking away. I've spent some time studying the central and peripheral nervous system as it relates to like trauma response and also to movement. And so much of what I've experienced is that when something's coming at me, I become very dysregulated and go into that kind of fight or flight mode. And when I'm there, there's no wise action for me. And so what I've learned through practice is perhaps the greatest skill I've gleaned through practice is this ability to down regulate on my own. And when I down regulate and get into from fight or flight into rest and digest, so from sympathetic into parasympathetic nervous system, then I have this ability to approach the person or the memory or whatever is presenting in front of me from a place of like feeling very grounded and much more wisdom. And so I love that you continually, and you always do this, and I so thank you for it, is it comes back to practice, whether it's sitting or walking or contemplation. Anyways, thank you. Thank you for always coming back to that.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. You got a hand in the back.
So I guess if the Buddha had some letters behind his name, that people would have more confidence in what he had to say. Part of our, our sense of who we are is tied into who others say that we are, and what we think we know. So some of this is some of our arrogance around knowing, like, I can do something, and if it makes me feel bad, I don't need science to tell me about my brain. If I do something that makes me feel bad, then I want someone who can give me some relief on how not to feel bad. They don't have to tell me how the brain works, how electricity works. They don't have to tell me about any of that. That is the other part of that's that egoic self that needs to have all of these things. So what I like about the Buddha's teachings is he just says, if this makes you feel bad, this will make you not feel bad. And if you are willing to do this, you will see. That's what he says. And so we are so used to particularly in a quote free society, I do what I want, when I want, how I want, why I want, for as long as I want, and we go with our feelings. Well, why don't you do this? Because I don't feel like it. I don't have to. And so that bleeds over. So when we come and we're trying to work on ourselves, we are so stuck in our rights and our privileges to be whatever, do whatever, whenever, however, why ever, that it's difficult for us to submit ourselves to the teachings to just Ehipatiko, come see for yourself if this is true. Oh, I need to leave you and this dismiss clock thing on your medicine. Can you turn this phone off? Thanks. And so that's why he talks about simplicity. Because, you know, our minds get all wrapped up in this, and then we buy 5 books on how the brain works, and we still haven't done anything with that habitual tendency we have. But we can sure discuss how the brain works, you know. And so I like the way for people like me, who has a lot of letters behind their name, but unenlightened people gave me those letters. And so I like what he has to say, that if this makes you feel bad and you want to feel good, and this is where I think some of our mindfulness got a little bit corrupted, because I don't really see where he says, you know, to like keep watching while he keeps saying, if it's that, abandon it. If it does this, abandon it. He just keeps saying, abandon it. You know, we're not trying to understand it. We're not trying to defrag it. We're not trying to, dissect it. He said, if it does that, and you know for yourself that that's unwholesome, abandon it. Simple as that. And so we have to deal with the feeling that, or with the disbelief that we can, with understanding and with conviction, change how we feel about something. And if we could work at doing that, we would make so much progress. We wouldn't have to go through the 5 stages of anything. You know, and so that's the hack. That's the shortcut. You know, if he says, if I do this and it makes me feel grief, or it makes me feel sad, or it makes me feel inept, or it makes me feel not good enough, or it makes me, you know, then what can I counter that thought with that will neutralize it and add to the positivity? What? You know, and if we would try to do that, it's not a thing that it's not so much we even have to understand. It's like things that we have to be willing to do. So that's what PRACTIC is what we're willing to do, not what we are willing to try to understand. So
thank you.
That's all I want to say.
Anyone else?
I think there's a number of things that happen in the mind depending on the circumstances, and sometimes a different approach will be more successful than another. But what I notice that happens for me sometimes is there's a kind of a reverberating of thoughts. It's almost like all that feedback going on, and we're trying to change the wiring or do something, is to keep reverberating, but that in itself is dukkha. So, how to let go of that? How not to allow that to do that? But I think sometimes there's these habit patterns that we're trying to unwire and rewire, and so sometimes you just have to bear with watching the reverberation, but replacing, that's what I find. I guess what I find when that happens is at a certain point I just try to replace it with something else, like start doing a metta bhavana, or just bringing up the wholesome. And I think this is what you're talking about, is that it's hard to, like when the reverberation is going on, it's hard to just ignore it. So, and sometimes it has some kind of power to it and persistence to it. So, sometimes it's really a challenge just to stop, or just to have it stop in its tracks. Sometimes it is possible. You can just lay it down, just set it down easily. But turning the attention to the wholesome, has been helpful for me to try to just replace it with something else.
Okay. So this practice suggests that we do that in all cases. And the more we do it, the more we get better at doing it. And the more we get better at doing it, the more we see it works for us. So this is about making a decision to choose what works, as opposed to acting like an insane person that keeps choosing what makes us crazy. Although the last time we chose it, it made us crazy, and the time before that, it made us crazy. It's about understanding what is wholesome and understanding what is unwholesome, and then making a choice to embrace the wholesome. Right? It's really that simple. It's really that quick. All right.
So how wonderful the thought, we should restrain ourselves. It sounds different now. It sounds good. It is the key to something. He said, those others do not recognize that here we should restrain ourselves. So when we're running headlong into that habitual tendency, we can restrain ourselves. And part of that restraint is pulling back on where there is the tendency to go, the thought there is the tendency to think, the feeling that there is the tendency to encourage and harbor. He's saying, no, the answer, the relief to that is going in the other direction. Going in the other direction. So in that sense, restraint then becomes not something somebody's keeping me from doing that I want to do. It is like really pointing me in the way to go. Go back that way.
It's like understanding that you never go down into the cellar where the light doesn't work. All right. Well, I appreciate and love all of you, and including the guys that we miss very much, and hopefully sometime in the very near future we'll be able to get back together again as a community. I hope everybody who has any weaknesses physically will get a shot so that they can be protected from this virus, and we can start together again as a whole group, because this sucks. But we're doing our best, though. We're doing our best. And you know how the world works. As soon as we can get back together, all of the echoes will go away. Okay.
And we're talking last about return.
Yes, we will. Yes, please.
Hello, hello, Sangha. Just a few announcements. Our Retire Mortgage fundraiser is still on the website. Donations are matched up to $350,000. Once you go to the website, it should be the first thing that pops up. We have the 4 Watches of the Night retreat coming up, December 28th through January 1st, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. each of those nights. The last night/morning going into the new year. We're practicing deep meditation here, so definitely prepare your body and mind. This will be offered via Zoom, and you can pop in and out as you wish. And last, our novena. We'll be doing in service to the community. If you have any prayers for loved ones, any sicknesses or losses, send any requests for prayers to prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org. That's all. Thank you.
And we thank you guys and appreciate you very much. Continue to have a safe day and find the joy in the day. This day, trust me.